So if you're in the market for a new budget smartphone and you're not quite sure which way to go, I've got the Galaxy M13 and the Motorola G32 to compare today. They're both around the £150 to £160 mark, although the M13 was recently available for just 99 quid. But if we just go by their normal selling price, they both offer similar specs. Are there advantages over picking one over another? Let's find out. So in terms of the display on the Galaxy M13 and the Motorola G32, on the Galaxy you get a 6.6-inch PLS LCD display with a 60Hz refresh rate. That's good for around 400 pixels per inch. But on the Motorola G32 it's ever so slightly smaller at 6.5 inches, but it is an IPS LCD with a 90Hz refresh rate. And as for both of these displays, they are both really nice. I do find that Samsung do a really great job with all of their displays. The colours are really punchy and just the look of One UI makes everything look a little bit more attractive. But the G32 is running just the bog standard stock Android experience of what you'd find on a Google Pixel phone. So there's no extra apps or anything apart from the Motorola Experiences app, whereas Samsung has got a whole list of Samsung exclusive apps on their phones. So depending on whether you prefer a more stock Android experience, I would pick the Motorola G32. But if you're not too bothered, Samsung's One UI is a really good option. It is one of my favourite of the manufacturer's skins that you can use. There's obviously MIUI that Xiaomi do and ColorOS that Oppo do. Samsung's One UI is one of my favourite to use. It does seem to be one that has less bloatware on it than some of those others. As for performance, you get the Samsung in-house Exynos 850 on the M13. This is built on an 8nm fabrication. But on the Motorola G32, you get a considerably more powerful Qualcomm Snapdragon 680 4G processor built on an even more efficient 6nm process. So you are going to get much better performance from the Motorola G32. And they both come equipped with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of base storage, which can of course be expanded via a micro SD card. So if you're someone that does a little bit of gaming on your phone, I would definitely pick the G32 over the M13 because you're going to get much better performance from that phone over that Galaxy. And as for buttons and ports on both of these phones, they're almost identical in where they're situated. So on the right of both phones, you've got your power button with integrated fingerprint sensor with your volume rockers above that. At the bottom, you've got a 3.5mm headphone jack, microphone, USB-C charging port, and a speaker grill. At the top, you've just got a single microphone hole. And then on the left of the phone, you've got your SIM tray, which houses micro SD cards. But as far as charging goes, the Motorola definitely wins here with 30-watt wired charging support, whereas on the Samsung you get restricted to just 15 watts. Both phones come with a 5000 mAh battery, so all-day battery life is not a problem at all. And as for the cameras, up front you get an 8MP f2.2 selfie camera on the Galaxy M13, and then on the Motorola G32 you get a 16MP f2.4 selfie camera on there, with both capable of shooting 1080p video at 30fps. And then on the rear of the phones, you get a 50MP primary camera at f1.8 on both phones. And on the Samsung, you get a 5MP f2.2 selfie camera with 123-degree field of view. And then on the Motorola, you get an 8MP f2.2 ultra wide with a slightly narrower 118-degree field of view. So you will get a slightly wider look from the Samsung, but it is only a 5MP sensor over the 8MP found on the Motorola, and that is noticeable in sample shots taken from both of these phones. The Motorola has clearly the better ultra wide. It has a lot more detail in the shots, and then both phones come with a 2MP depth camera, but the third camera also doubles as a macro camera on the Motorola G32. So if you're into your macro shots, that is something that's good to have as well. And photos from the main camera from both phones are really good. They've got plenty of detail and they've got good amounts of colour. On the Samsung, there isn't the usual colour pop, what you'd find with other Samsung devices. And the Motorola does look really natural. They don't over exaggerate any of the colours or anything like that. So personally for me, between the two in terms of the camera experience, overall I would pick the Motorola. You've got that higher resolution ultra wide and then the more natural looking photos from the main camera. And if you want to use the macro camera, you've also got that as well. And as for colour options on both of these phones, you can get the M13 in orange copper, light blue and deep green. And then the Motorola G32, you can get what I've got here, satin silver, mineral grey and rose gold. So depending on what your tastes are for your colour options, that's what you've got for these phones. So that's just my very quick comparison between the Galaxy M13 and the Motorola G32. Two completely different phones in terms of their software and things like that, but very similar in price, unless of course you get the M13 for 99 quid. But generally, they're both similar prices and they both are pretty decent phones. The Motorola, you're going to get much better performance and personally an overall better camera experience. But you might sway towards the Samsung for One UI. But other than that, it doesn't really have much more going for it than what the G32 does. So if they're both a similar price, personally, I'd pick the Motorola. But let me know what you think of these phones and which one you pick. And I'll see you in the next one.